This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Faisal Hoque, a renowned entrepreneur, best-selling author, and globally recognized thought leader who has spent his career at the intersection of business, innovation, leadership, and mindful transformation, helping individuals and organizations navigate change in an era of rapid disruption. His upcoming book, Transcend: Unlocking Humanity in the Age of AI, explores how leaders can harness AI to elevate human potential, foster creativity, and drive long-term success while safeguarding the core values that define us. With a career spanning entrepreneurship, Fortune 500 partnerships, and contributions to Thinkers 50, MIT Ideas, and national security initiatives, Faisal brings a rare blend of business acumen, leadership insight, and technology expertise. He is a #1 Wall Street Journal and USA Today best-selling author whose insights have been published in Fast Company, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. Over the past 2 decades, he has founded and led multiple companies, including Hoque and Next Chapter, focusing on fostering entrepreneurship, growth, and social impact. His leadership has been instrumental in forming transformative partnerships with global brands such as GE, MasterCard, American Express, and IBM. Beyond his entrepreneurial endeavors, Hoque serves as an innovative partner for, is it CACI, or do I just say CACI?
CACI.
CACI, which is a company focused on U.S. national security. So, Faisal, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks for having me.
So, give us a little context. Just I did read the bio there, but tell us a little bit about where you grew up and kind of a little bit about your educational background and how you ended up to where you are today.
Sure. So I was born in Bangladesh, came to US when I was 19 years old to go to school. Went to school in University of Minnesota and Southern Illinois University. In my senior year of undergrad, I built a software product that started my career, went to Pitney Bowes, then went to Dun& Bradstreet. After that, I started my first company, which was folded into GE Capital to launch GE's first B2B e-commerce business in late 90s. And then since then, I have had several entrepreneurial businesses, all tech centric or tech enabled. I worked with across the globe with lots of Fortune 2000 businesses, and last 8 years or so, I've worked extensively with our federal government agencies like DoD and DHS. Transcend is my 10th book, which actually came out last couple of 2 weeks ago, and it is doing very well. And
Did you say 10th book?
yes, my 10th
Wow,
book.
wow, you're a prolific author.
I am. I love to write. Started writing, around 2000, and since then it just has become part of my identity. Books are all for charity, by the way. They go to cancer research because I have a cancer surviving son, and so that's my story.
Yeah.
I've been an entrepreneur. I worked with Global 2000 CEOs and their senior leadership management team, and I've also spent quite a bit of time in our government, facilities and with
Okay.
government leaders.
And where are you located now? Where do you reside?
I live in Connecticut,
Okay.
in Stamford, Connecticut, right
Okay.
outside of New York.
Okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about, leadership in the age of AI. Everyone's talking about it and, everyone's got an opinion about it. Um, how will it need to be different, in the book you talk a lot about, big philosophies and these big societal questions, so tell us your take on AI and go from there.
Yeah, so look, AI, it's a pivotal moment in our human history because of the fact that we have never built or encountered anything that could be potentially smarter than us, regardless whether it has an emotion or a human spirit or not. So that's the, and so what that means is that this technology is not just another tool, it's going to be part and parcel of our co-workers, our partner, our enablers. So the way we work, the way we manage, the way we lead is going to be very different than where we are today. You're going to have a bunch of digital co-workers, and you're going to have human resource and digital resource. So if you if you think from a leadership point of view, it doesn't matter whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you're running a Fortune 500 company, you're going to have to think very differently, whereby you're split between system management and human management, right? And so that creates a very different outlook than we have ever encountered, right? Because most of the technologies that we have encountered so far, it's passive, like, you say, okay, well, I've got a phone, I have a phone, so what? Now you're going to say, okay, I'm going to have an assistant or a agent that's going to do a bunch of stuff for me, and I'm going to assign work for it. I'm going to assign work. So it's a mind shift from a leadership point of view changes, because that has an impact how you think, but it also has an impact on the people that you work with, the people we live with, the people we interact with, because there has a job implication, economic implication, emotional implication. So leadership is going to dramatically change. You cannot be single dimensional leaders anymore.
Yeah, and does that what you just described, does that excite you? Does that sound like an exciting thing, or does it give you pause?
So, since you flipped through the book, I very much preach this middle way,
Yeah.
whereby I'm very optimistic about technology in general because I'm a technologist. I grew up as a technologist, but when I think about humanity and the potential havoc this technology can create, by not just by itself, but because of people, what people do with it, right? So from that
Yeah.
point of view, I'm also concerned, in many level. So think about, like, I mean, we've always had these transitional and transformational technology that changed how we work, like, from industrial revolution to, the last 30, 40 years of information technology, and now this. But the acceleration of this technology is going to change, replace, and recreate a job, as an example, if you think about from that perspective, and also how we live. So imagine, I have a son who's 22, but people have kids who are now 5, 6, 3, 4, whatever the case may be. Imagine next 5 years to 10 years, where a lot of the entry level jobs are going to be challenging because it's going to be replaced by lots of automation, right?
Mm.
how do we train these people? Train this younger generation to survive in a world whereby, let's say, somebody just graduated the computer science degree, or graphic design, or social science, whatever the case may be. So we have to think, behave, act, and prepare ourselves very differently, right? Or imagine
Yeah.
psychological impact, whereby you're no longer driving a car, and you're going to Taco Bell, and it's some humanoid robots is fetching your taco, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be, right? So,
Yeah.
so there's a major change that's going to happen. Nobody really knows what will be the ultimate impact, but it changes how we think about how we live, how we work, how we lead, and how we organize
Yeah.
ourselves.
So what do you think are the critical leadership skills that leaders are going to need to work in this new world?
I think the human centricity is the biggest skill that we're going to need. because it's going to help us to figure out what's the impact of this technology by uplifting the best we can get out of humanity, right? So that's
Hmm.
one. The other thing is that this sort of technology has the potential to completely outsource our human agency, and we can lose our critical thinking process, right? So because over dependency on these technologies, so critical thinking process is going to be critical. I mean, I was saying to somebody and a friend of mine, and he was saying, "Look, my son just took a picture of a bunch of Lego from the floor, and the Chat GPT is suggesting what he should be building." Well, think about when you were a child or I was a
Yeah.
child, we'll just start playing with it and we'll come up with whatever we come up with. But that play allowed us to be not knowing the answer and exploring the unknown and critically thinking about what's next, right? So if all that is constantly outsourced, you're gonna be at a disadvantage. So the leader's job is going to be pushing this notion of critical thinking and practicing consciously, intentionally practicing that critical thinking and kind of like not get sucked into over dependency.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting in reading the book and going through the book. There are some statements you make that catch my attention. So I wrote down a few of those, and so we'll talk about them. But you said that AI will make some humans immortal. What do you mean by that?
Well, look, I mean, it's already happening in the sense that you got all the knowledge that are now in this large language model, and you can actually have a conversation. Like, in the process of writing the book, I mean, there's hallucination, so it's not all 100% accurate. I could start a conversation with Aristotle. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a made reality, but it's a some is somewhat reality, right? And then I saw other day Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn founder, has a book called Super Intelligency, and then he created this persona of himself, and he acting out as if he's a superhero and a baseball player, and et cetera, et cetera. So this idea of immortality beyond your time could be very real. It may be virtual, but it is real, right? I mean, and you're
yeah,
already seeing all these videos that are popping out that's not real, but it creates alternative reality. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, you can pass on your knowledge if you are a creative thinker, author, writer, so whatever the case may be, and it will stay evergreen, and you'll be able to interact with it. So that could be exciting part of it, but it also could be very deceptive, right? Because it's a artificial. That's why we call the artificial intelligence, right? It's an
yeah,
artificially created emotion. It's not real, and
yeah,
there's a danger that he can fall in love with this artificial emotion
yeah.
that's not that's illusion. It's a complete illusion.
Yeah, it made me think of like, let's say for instance, you have a parent that has a terminal illness or something, and you could almost build a model where after that person passes away, that you could ask that person, what would you do in this situation, and what advice would you give me, and whatever. And
Uh,
I guess you could make an argument that could give you some direction. Although the human nature is that it depends, right? So
Yeah, and and there is a factor that it's a there's a beauty in struggle and unknown and the way humanity works is there's a beginning and there's an end, right? And so when you take that away, it creates other type of uh, psychological, emotional, and physical impact that we quite don't know what will happen, right? So, for example, I was at a conference last year, and somebody was showing, well, somebody, just like you're talking with this parent-child model, somebody created a model of their child that's passed away, and it just a constant reminder that that person is gone, but yet you're feel you have this emotional, artificial, pattern-driven model that's not real, right? So you're creating this
Yeah.
emotional dependency. I don't know how healthy that is. It's like,
Yeah.
so there's a reason why the universe works the way. I'm getting now really
Yeah.
spiritual and physical, philosophical. And as a person, I prescribe to that. There should be beginning and there should be an end. That's
Yeah.
how humanity was supposed to be meant. And not supposed to live on because you're supposed to make space for other people, and the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
generation.
And you talked also that in AI you have the maximalists and the Luddites. So,
Yes.
tell us, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are people who think this is the greatest thing since the sliced bread, and it's gonna solve our problem with food, climate, infrastructure, longevity, et cetera, right? So there's that belief. They're the maximalists. And then there are people who thinks that it's gonna completely destroy the planet because it's gonna be taken over, and we're gonna all become vegetable because we've just prescribed into convenience and dependency, right? We don't think
Mm,
for we don't think of our own, and then also it's going to create this massive divide where more and more people are going to get marginalized because of the fact that look, as much as we talk about artificial intelligence, it's not like every single one of us are a part of making it, right? There are a handful of people who
mm.
are defining it, crafting it, et cetera, right? So
Right.
so you could imagine a scenario where most of us are marginalized, and there is a power play, and it's controlled by a handful of people, right? And then let's imagine even worse scenario, sci-fi scenario, where AI itself has taken over the humanity, right? So
Yeah.
there's the fear, the fear factor comes into play. I kind of somewhere in between, in the sense that what will happen in next, let's say, 5, 10, 30, 50 years is whatever we collectively do now, right? So we have an opportunity to shape it collectively in terms of intentionally how we use it, how we deploy it, and then also how platform vendors creates the technology, and what kind of guardrail do we have around it, both from a technological point of view, but also from a legislative and legal governmental framework point of view.
Another thing that came to mind too in reading the book was like, we have the technology right now to say, let's just say you take a politician or somebody else that states something and says something. Well, AI can tell you right now whether that's true or not.
Right.
But humans will still say, well, I don't
Yes.
believe that.
Right.
So
That's right.
even
Right.
though it's
So
factually, yeah. So
yeah, I mean, there's a, there's a whole massive danger of manipulation, misinformation, identity theft, privacy. Those are all the bad things, right?
yeah,
I mean, it's fun and game till it's no longer fun and game.
right.
So, and I'm sure you've seen this in social media, where like Pope and Putin and our current president is having a dinner. It's funny,
Yeah,
because but it's not, right? I mean,
right.
that's not what's going on. But some people will believe that, right? So
Yeah.
so there's a danger to it, and and some people you will use that as a manipulation, right? So it's I mean, it's a lot to think about and a lot to take on, especially when if you look at April 30th, 2025. I mean, we are in a kind of cusp of a lot of different things. There's a uncertainty with economy. There's uncertainty with global geopolitics. There's all sorts of wars that's broken out throughout the planet, and then you have this technology that kind of foundational level changing a lot of the way we think and work and communicate and whatever we do, right? So it's an interesting time. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's a very
Yeah,
interesting time.
for sure. And in the book, you also ask the question, I think you said it, what if AI learns to deceive?
Yes, Exactly. And
you
then,
know. So
yeah, absolutely. And you can actually, you can have a conversation right now with most of the large language model. Doesn't matter which vendor has given you that, whether that's OpenAI or whether that's Claude or somebody else. And, you can get into a scenario where you start challenging it, or, you start, it can manipulate you, right? Because
yeah,
because it's generating and
right.
regenerating based on pattern, right? So
Yeah, and then what do we lose? You give the example in the book as well as at a very elementary level, like the autocomplete on our phones, gets us to the point where maybe we're losing some language, or you go even back further than that. You know, show you how I've been around a long time. I can remember when calculators came and it's
yeah,
like, oh my gosh. So for me to do a long division or some other complicated thing without a calculator right now, it seems like, how could I even do that? So we
right.
do lose some things
Yes.
by counting on these machines to do it for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's this notion of whole reverse improvement, right? The term reverse improvement comes from that you become so dependent that you're not improving as a human being. You're improved as in terms of efficiency. It doesn't mean that you are being effective. It
Yeah,
doesn't mean that it's impactful, but efficiency doesn't always equals to impact.
yeah, yeah. And another thing that I thought was, again, you're asking these big questions in this book, which I think are just so compelling. And one of it, what does it actually mean to be human?
Yeah,
And you say, like Aristotle says, that our ability to be rational rather than impulsive is human. Uh, or is it maybe the ability to love? You know, is that
yeah.
the human thing? So
Yeah,
can,
human beings are complex, right? Machines are logic driven, right? So right there is, or at least it's pattern driven, right? Maybe we have kind of gone beyond the notion of logic because it's pattern driven, whereby it may not be logical. But I mean, we are complex in the sense that, we all, most of us try to have some notion of authentic self-actualization in the
yeah,
sense your journey is your journey. There's no way I could replicate your journey. It's whatever my journey is my journey, right? And
yeah,
so that's authentic. And we love, we hate, we create, right? And we all have this basic aspiration to be fulfilled, right? So
yeah,
if you start taking away that desire to be fulfilled, then you become something else, right? So it's a complex question. These are basic fundamental human agency, and
right.
I don't know all the answer, obviously, and that's why I ask all these questions in the
Yeah,
book. But we should be
yeah.
thinking about these things.
So I talked to a friend the other day. He told me that he'd listened to this podcast where the CEO came on and he said, people just, don't really think rationally sometimes because he gave the example from a business perspective. If you look at the at marriage, no one would ever do it because it doesn't make sense. There's
Sure.
too much examples of failures, so you wouldn't do it. Yet, most people think about getting married.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, but that's a emotional fulfillment, right? It's
yeah,
an
yeah.
aspiration. And if our society, by the way, there's a societal factor is, and I'm saying this after being married 33 years. I mean, there's a societal factor that we are kind of we grow up with these biases that at a certain age we're supposed to do this. We're supposed to live certain way, and meaning of fulfillment or success is certain way. So we kind of all try to follow that. And some people outliers and do something else.
Yeah,
But that's a choice. That's the freedom, right?
yeah,
It's again, human beings are complicated. I mean,
yeah. So it was, I forget the name of the movie, but there was a movie, gosh, probably 10 years ago, if not more, about it was way ahead of its time where the guy falls in love with the Siri person on his phone or whatever the
right,
thing was,
right,
And so
right.
yeah, it's just crazy to think about that. How old were you when you immigrated to the US?
I was 18, 19, right after my high school, meaning I
Yeah.
finished my
Yeah.
high school and wanted to go to college. So I applied to a bunch of schools here in US, and then came here. I grew up in a middle class family. My father he's now retired, obviously. He was a civil engineer, and my mother was a homemaker. And my father actually wanted me to stay back home and go to his civil engineering
Yeah.
university. I didn't want to do anything with civil engineering. I went to a missionary Catholic missionary high school, and I was very much exposed to the Western culture. And we used to have this U.S. Information Center not too far away from where I went to school. St. Joseph is where I went to high school. And I would go and spend hours and hours in that U.S. Information Center, which was kind of part of it's not embassy, but it's a cultural center. And they
Yeah.
have this huge collection of these jazz records and all this American literature. And I got totally, infatuated with it. And I would flip through all this Barron's Guide to College during those times because there was no internet, as when there were
Yeah. Yeah.
these printed guides. And I applied to a bunch of colleges, and I got started my school in Southern Illinois with a meager partial scholarship. So I would work as a graveyard shift janitor to make some money and to put myself to school. And then I got a full scholarship from University of Minnesota, so I moved to University of Minnesota.
That's great. So, since we're asking these big questions, and I know you're not an authority, I'm just interested in your opinion. So, you take, a country like Bangladesh or other countries that,
Mhm.
let's just say, for sake of discussion, have less resources or less
Sure.
opportunity. Do you think the AI future um, could help other countries, get out of that, or do you think it's just going to make the people that have more get more, and the people that have less get less?
Look, it's a so we can only talk from a historical point of view, right? So if you look at last, I don't know, that's the last 30 years of history, internet has been a great connector, and as a result, lifestyle of a lot of people, especially the young educated people, regardless of where they live, has improved, right? Because somebody from let's say sitting in Cyprus or sitting in, let's say, in Manila or in Dhaka, Bangladesh, can actually do some work in a different location. They never leave home, but they do the work, and you created a monstrosity ability to learn because of the internet. Now, fast
Hmm.
forward, where we are now today. I think the AI will give even a greater opportunity to learn and to be far more productive and creative should you choose to do that, right? But the challenge is going to be, since everybody is now have the access, I think competition is going to be more fierce, and you're going to have lesser opportunity because a lot of the work is going to be automated, right? So
Yeah.
it's hard to tell. I read a piece couple of weeks back on Fast Company, arguing that the economic case for focusing on human jobs, because I mean, organizations or businesses will have to sell it to somebody, right? I mean, we're not going to get to a point over the next 10 years where, I mean, nobody needs money and we could, you're talking about sci-fi. We're not going to get to the Star Trek or the Star Wars model where nobody needs money. There's still
Yeah.
there will be need for currency and commerce and all that. But if there's lesser amount of people who doesn't have economic opportunity or income, there's lesser opportunity to sell. It's basic economics, right? So
Yeah.
so so there's opportunity, but there's also greater challenge, right? And I think that whether that's let's say in Pennsylvania, to not too far away from me, or let's say in Alabama, or whether it's in Bangladesh where I come from, the opportunity will be for people who can learn, adapt, and leverage this technology to showcase their unique capabilities. You're going to be competing against somebody who knows this versus who doesn't know this. That's what's going to be a
Mm.
first competition. And the second competition would be man versus machine, right? That may be
Yeah.
a little lesser, but that would be also be the case. We're kind of fooling ourselves if we don't think that that's not going to be the case, right?
Yeah, and you look at things like, if you're optimistic about it, you can say, gosh, if a machine can help you do a lot of the things that are task oriented and they really don't, although people like checking off boxes and doing tasks, but if it freed up more time for you to do the things that maybe we
Yes.
think are more human, then maybe we can create better solutions for some of the problems we face today.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, as a researcher, as a writer, and somebody who solves problem for other people, me and my team are more productive. We can create more because, it doesn't take like 10 hours to create a presentation, as an example. It doesn't
Right.
take 10 hours to do research on case studies, right? As an example, right? So there is that element to it. You can imagine like, okay, you're physically spending all this time to let's say straighten up your grocery aisle. Maybe a robot can do it while I do something else. But
Yeah.
imagine a 16-year-old who's looking for their first job. Are they not? I mean, where are those jobs there? So this is where I
Yeah.
get pessimistic in the sense that, they are in grocery aisles, they are in maybe driving Uber or whatever the case may be. So I think we're gonna go through an adjustment period, right? Like a
Hmm.
lot of other technology that happens, but it is definitely already freeing up a lot of time if you're savvy to do a lot of creative things that you wouldn't be able to do
Yeah.
otherwise.
And another statement in the book that I wrote down that you said, being human is to understand and feel freedom.
Yes.
So tell me what your thought process is on that.
It's like, I mean, you asked me about my life story. I mean, those are all freedom-driven choices, right? I
Hmm.
was free, whether I was free or not, I was at least free to think that I could do it, therefore I did it, right? So that's what makes human. Uh, that makes us human, right? Because it's the choice of doing something that's uniquely yours, right? So if you say, I mean, like, look, that's what American dream is all about, right? You choose to do something and you go and do it, right? So it's uniquely, and that's not just American dream. I mean, that's the dream of every single person that's on planet Earth, right? So that's the difference between a robot and human being in the sense that there's no feeling. We feel to do something and we
Yeah.
do it. That's what makes us uniquely human. And and with freedom comes ability to love or ability to care for somebody, ability to do something that's meaningful or impactful, right? So
Yeah.
those are the choices.
And you also make the statement of, when this new AI world, you said, like, think of building an AI innovation portfolio.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so look, there are lots of things you can do as an individual or an organization or government. So the question is, I mean, if you look at a lot, I mean, there are a lot of talk about AI, but not all AI implementation is being successful, nor a lot of AI implementation is actually giving you the value that you want to create out of it, right? It's entertaining to talk about how fast I can generate a image or how it can mimic our voice, that sort of a thing. That doesn't necessarily translate into value. And value is not just from the financial return. It could be other type of return. One of my motivation to kind of study and learn and write about AI was what it can do for healthcare because of my personal situation. And
Yeah.
and and you can go many different ways to create those kind of opportunities. The trick is you have to sit there as an organization or an individual and you have to say, okay, these are my purposes, these are my objective or vision or goals that I want to pursue, and how many things I can do or invest into to get the greatest return out of it, however I want define return. Just like you look at it as an investment portfolio, right? You can say, look, I want to have some low risk, high risk, and some medium risk investment, and for that, I want certain amount of return. It's kind of like the same model. It's that financial model, but different context. And then you
Yeah.
also have to look at it. Okay, look, how many of these things, if I actually do it, is going to create major risk? If I create a model like that parent tell model that you just talked about, that I want to create, my parents passed away, like my mother passed away last year. I want to hang on to her. Is it going to actually going to, is it risk or is it a reward, right? So it's
Yeah.
the ability to rack and stack the impact and return, and creating a bunch of options and pursuing a particular option is the notion of creating an innovation portfolio.
And you also mentioned that, there's these new positions in companies that a few years ago no one even heard of. So
Right.
some of them are like Chief AI Officer or AI Innovation Officer or AI Risk Officer. So there's going to be a new high-level positions that are related specifically to AI, and what do we do with it?
Yeah, I mean, look, because we uh, early on we created chief information officer that never existed.
Right.
We created chief technology officer that never existed because the technology and information kind of gone to the next level and next level. The reason you're going to end up having chief AI officer or chief transformation officer or chief innovation officer or chief risk management officer is because of the fact that the technology that we're dealing with is so different. It's not just a tool, not it's a human being. It's somewhere in between, right? So it requires a different kind of systemic and psychological thinking that we never encountered. So
Mhm.
some people will have to get specialized and think about just nothing but those kind of implication and opportunities and the governance model to be able to deploy this. Otherwise it's going to become I mean, you're not going to be able to sustain, let alone compete.
And you also mentioned in the book too, and in the bio you said we said that you work for done some work for government agencies.
Yeah.
So you talk about government, and it'd be interesting to hear your perspective on that. You stated that government has one job to improve the lives of its citizens. Government plays a crucial role to build trust, to do change culture, and help change for the good. And um, is government embracing this, and are they up to speed with other businesses, or are they kind of behind, you think?
It's somewhere between. It depends on which agency and which part of the government you're talking about. Look, I mean, a government, any government, whether that's U.S. government or whether that's, the government in, France or China, they all have a singular goal, which is enabling their citizens so that they can have a better life, they can have better competitive advantage, et cetera, et cetera. That should be the goal of the government. So in that context, what can government do? It's not government who creates the business, or it's not the government who improves the economic standard. What they do is they create the infrastructure that allows entrepreneurs and CEOs and business owners to take advantage of that and be innovative and create things, right? So that
Yeah.
infrastructure is what the government should be providing. So when you talk about is the government up to the snuff, well, that depends. I mean, if you talk about defense, if you talk about research, a lot of the technology that we use today actually came from the government, right? So, if you think about internet was built and created in DARPA, not not some company's lab, right? Government jumpstarts a lot of this innovation, creates the infrastructure, and as a result, a particular country succeed or doesn't succeed. If you talk about the agencies, meaning U.S. agencies, some agencies are quite far along, utilizing AI for detection, for analysis, decision making, defense, et cetera, et cetera. Some agencies are just getting started, right? And the government agencies have exactly the same issue as the commercial entities because it's a new way of thinking, new way of learning. There's cultural implication, organizational change management, and then there's the technology, right? So, and we
Hmm.
run on legacy environment, right? I mean, we have
Right.
old data, old systems, so incorporating that into the play. So they have equal amount of challenge as anybody else. But government, has implementation challenge of utilizing this technology, just like anybody else. But the government also has a different level of an challenge, which is really creating that balanced legislative legal infrastructure that um, that kind of fuel innovation, but also creates the guardrail so that it protects the citizens. And if you think about in the context of AI, privacy, intellectual property right, um, uh, you know, um, uh, rogue agents, utilization of AI to harm other citizens. Those are pretty complex and big issues to deal with. We're
Yeah.
not quite there.
And not to get political by any means, but if you look at how, collaboration, I think we can all agree, in the business world and government that the more we collaborate, perhaps the better we do. But if we're using more AI machines or whatever, does that push us more towards the isolation? That
Yeah.
some people think we should go towards. So, um,
Yeah, I mean, it started with social media, and social media already had element of AI in the sense that algorithm manipulation, right? So because
right,
it put us in the echo chamber, and we're not far more divided country. Even when we agree, we can't agree, right? So
right,
than we ever were, right? So AI has 1,000 times more potential to create a very divisive society because of the things we're talking about: fake
right.
video, fake news, and you want to believe what you want to believe, right? So,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's challenging.
Can you share with us what you do for the government in your role?
Yeah, I mean, look, I do very similar thing as what I do for commercial agencies in this commercial businesses in the sense that I help agencies to put together with my partner CSEI, a series of innovation portfolio utilizing technology, right? So whether that's AI or whether it's some other technology, it doesn't matter. And then because we've been kind of in this thought leadership bent to create framework that regardless of the technological change, you can create opportunities and you can explore options. That's what I enable them. And also help them, put the governance infrastructure so that the organizationally they can protect the data, the people, the security element of applying these technologies.
And then another area you brought it up earlier, but healthcare, with your son's issue and diagnosing of diseases and so on. I think there's great excitement about being able to do that even better. And then you look at the world of prosthetics and implants.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
you could really change somebody's life if you can dial that in.
Yeah, I mean, this is the part I get most excited about, right? Because you're talking about dependency. When my mother, her last stage had dementia, and she had a very difficult time uh, communicating with her aides because she would often fall back in her native language, and they wouldn't understand what she was talking about. And I was thinking because I was actually in the process of middle of writing the book with my
Uh-huh.
team. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be nice if there was actually an AI assistant that was constantly following her and translating to her aid what she really needed or didn't need. So that is a real impactful for somebody's
Mm.
life, as well as the caregiver, right? Because it makes it much more easier. And you talk about disease diagnostics. Often enough, the reason we miss the diagnosis because we don't have enough data and we don't have enough pattern recognition and comparison. So if we had
Uh,
enough data and enough pattern recognition capability, we have the computing power. But now if we could build up the database that has all these different type of patterns from different type of age group, ethnic mix, and et cetera, the diagnosis will gonna get better and better and better and more accurate because early diagnostics is what improves a patient's life in terms of the type of medication they're getting, but also in their lifestyle, right? So those
Yeah.
things are going to be monumental, and prosthetics in another. I mean, you're already seeing the notion of, I don't know whether you remember the bionic man and bionic woman. I mean, we're already
Right.
there with that stuff. So it's a
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. Really interesting. Yeah. You also talk about, you know, uh, addition by subtraction theory, and how will this help us, or bring disappointment. So tell us a little bit about what you mean by that theory.
Yeah, look, it's like I mean, it comes from a kind of this philosophical belief that more less is more, if you want to simplify that term. And if you look at the greatest products and the most impactful products or services, they're simple. Anybody can understand that and anybody can use that. So the more we keep adding uh, to this notion of innovation, if I had this and if I had that, pick up your phone and you'll probably use only 10% of its functionality, right? But we
Yeah.
keep adding to it, right? So when you subtract, sometimes it's better and it becomes more meaningful. So this notion of adding more impact by subtracting is it goes to simplicity, right? I mean, you can think about cooking as an example, right? I mean, if you keep adding more and more and more to a dish, usually that dish turns out to be not eatable because it's just
Mm,
it's just complex and it's
yeah.
not so tasty anymore, right? So it's a kind of a Buddhist minimalistic mindset that the simple, sometimes simple is better, and the more we add to things, it gets more complicated.
Yeah. And you kind of conclude the book by saying, you brought up all these big questions, philosophical questions that we discussed earlier, and you said, that the idea we need to have the right attitude, which is probably just a loving attitude.
Yes.
If we can just keep that front and center, and maybe we'll be okay. But unfortunately, not everyone's going to take it in that direction, probably.
Yes, I mean that's why we have what we have. Listen, love, to practice love, you have to have a conscious practice of empathy, right? Because how can
Yeah.
you love somebody that you don't know, or how can
Yeah.
you love somebody that's not your own, right? So
Yeah.
that requires putting yourself in that other person's shoe, and it's not easy because most of us are I mean, human being, it's survival of the fittest, and we always think about ourselves. So it takes a conscious effort to think about somebody else, and then as a whole, think about the planet as large, and that's not easy.
Yeah.
But if we all could do that, we would have less division. We'll have a better world. I
Yeah.
mean, think about how destructive we are as a human society. I mean, we don't think twice about, or some of us do, but many of us, we wouldn't have so much misery, self-created misery, if we were little more empathetic.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Faisal, in anticipation of our discussion today, what haven't I asked you that you want to be sure and get in the program?
I don't know. I mean, we covered a wide variety of topic. I mean, all I can say is that, look, what future holds depends on what we collectively do, and that collectively means we can't control everything, but we can certainly control ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Each of our action makes a difference. It's like a ripple effect on a pond, right? You drop a stone and it creates this ripple effect. So how we conduct ourselves, in the sense, what we put out there, how we interact, especially in the context of this technology who's constantly learning from our behavioral pattern, it's important what we do with ourselves, and
Yeah.
so if there's one thing that I would, talk about or suggest, is that we have to get more grounded and kind of hold ourselves accountable in terms of our own actions.
Yeah. And I think we also need to embrace too, like if AI is you know, putting information in, what we get out is what we put in. So
Yes.
I think we need to embrace diversity, from different perspectives. Otherwise, as you said, if there's only 5 or 10 people putting all the information in there, you're going to get,
Yeah.
different information out than if you had very diverse people doing that.
100%. It's super important that it's a collective voice and not handful of people's voice, right? So
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we'll see. Time will
yeah.
tell.
Well, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. So that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Lead yourself first before you can lead other people. And I read a book, 3, 4 years ago called Lift, and my fundamental message was you can't lift anybody if you can't lift yourself, and
Yeah.
that's about leadership, right? So you gotta have to lift yourself to a higher ground. Competition is within yourself, not it's not, with others. So each day, if we can make ourselves better, as a result, hopefully we can make other people better.
Well, Faisal, this has been a real a pleasure. Gosh, we took on some big philosophical topics, and it's fun to do that, and good to think about it as well. So, your book's fantastic, and I
Thank you.
think it's really yeah. You got 11th one in your head already, or are you working on number
No,
11?
I
So,
don't know.
okay. Well,
Maybe.
wish you the best of luck. And you said that the books you do are for charity, so that you
Yes.
do that to raise money. So that's impressive. So.
Thank you.
Thank,
Thank you
thanks for
so
your
much.
time today. It was a real, as I said, a real pleasure, and I really enjoyed talking to you. And maybe I'll run into you down the road sometime.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks for
Okay,
having me.
take care. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.